This is why you can't take me anywhere. Speaking of disruptive technologies, artificial intelligence, and I think it's especially relevant for this audience because it's been billed as the one technology that can solve a lot of health and development challenges right now. I'm so excited to have this panel here with me. Dr. David Sengeh, Chief Minister from Sierra Leone, Rachel Adams, Minister Sabin Nsanzimana from Rwanda, Bill Gates, and Juliana Rotich. Thank you so much all for joining me here. I think to illustrate what we're talking about here, I met yesterday Bayo from Nigeria. He's one of the grantees in this cohort from the Grand Challenges Call Out. And his project, okay, there's a shot for Bayo over there. His project uses AI for financial inclusion. So using voice notes and large language models, people can talk about, I spent this much on transport today, this much on food. In Yoruba, it will translate it and give you back and say, okay, you need to go easy on your budget, which is, I guess, one of the good applications of AI. So, Bill, you've said that AI changes everything. But that's expected of you to say. You're a tech guy. You're the tech guy. Do you genuinely think this is a game changer?
Well, it's very early days in AI, and that's why it's so impressive that already we see these 50 innovators here in Africa, literally a year after the first LLM breakthrough, ChatGPT-4 got out there. And so part of the goal is to have these applications that reduce inequity not be 10 or 20 years later, have them be right on the cutting edge. And that's why it was so fascinating to see the breadth of problems that were tackled by these innovators. A lot of health, agriculture, financial services, education. And as we go into the next phase, where we're just committing today another 30 million of grants from the foundation, and this focused on the African innovators, we'll be helping them group together around some of these areas and take their application to the next stage. And a lot of these things are already in pilot mode. We need to prove out the value, see what the challenges are. I'm thrilled, and I do see, when you say there's a shortage of teachers, a shortage of healthcare workers, that the R&D for new medicines doesn't go fast enough. The reason I think we can improve every one of those things is that we'll take local innovators and use AI as a tool of productivity.
I'll come back to that announcement in just a second. But Dr. Sengeh, a lot of new technology hasn't lived up to its hype. How is AI different? Is AI different?
Thank you, and thank you, Bill, for that big announcement of 30 million. That's a major difference that will be needed for AI in how we scale these technologies. I do think that AI is like every technology. The difference is going to come from the humans who are behind it, the solutions and the problems that we can solve. Certainly its ability, as we've seen, to go through large amounts of data to bring out information to the decision makers is critical. One of the mistakes that can't be made, and I think that's one difference and why this meeting is so important, is we can't wait until the technology is completely developed or so advanced and then begin to say, oh, but wait, how does Africa fit in? Or what are the problems that we're trying to fix? How does this address equity? Technology cannot drive inequity. We have to think differently. Technology can be a driver of equity, and AI can achieve that if we begin to think about that differently as the humans who are curating these data, who are behind the policy and the solutions that we're building.
But this technology is also driving inequity in some cases. There's lots of concerns about that.
Absolutely, and I think that's why it's important that you can have policymakers, funders, and technologists together in the same room and on the same panel, as this is having to say, how do we drive equity. I mean, one example in Sierra Leone, we have what we call the result checker. I traveled all across the country. It used to take $10 or up to 10 weeks for people to know their children's results, so they can't make decisions. And if you actually analyze the data, lots of teenage pregnancy happened in the period of waiting for results and exam results to make a decision. So we built a solution that makes it available, the results available to everybody using SMS. Now, technology there, 2G, 1G, 2G SMS solution, is available to 90% of the country.
Right.
And everybody, about 3 million times now it's been used within the last 2 years, is able to access this technology and make decisions in real time, irrespective of where you are, whether you're in Freetown or the farthest remote areas. So technology there is an equalizer, actually, of opportunities, and this is possible.
All right, I know Dr. Adams and Juliana, you've met some of the grantees in this cohort, and you're probably excited about some of them. Juliana, starting with you, what are 1 or 2 AI applications you're especially excited about that you think have a real game-changing effect?
Thank you, Larry. So in addition to Olubayo's data science network, where it's driving financial inclusion, I'm particularly inspired also by Theofrida from Tanzania. She is adding an IoT component. And you were saying earlier about the hype of technologies,
right,
and IoT is one of those that are part of that Gartner hype cycle. But really, the data that comes from the IoT devices that can be put in farms to do early detection of diseases, and then putting that data into a large language model that can also help to inform farmers about, hey, there's a problem here. And that's really interesting to me because it's a mix of technologies and has the potential to help increase crop yields. It's yet to be validated, but very, very interesting. And in addition to the other grantees, one of the interesting things about all of them, most of them, is that they're all adding various African languages and creating these large language models. I was with David Sengeh earlier in the year at TED, and one of the things that we realized is the current large language models, they don't have the African or global context baked into it. So it excludes a large chunk of the world. That these grantees are now creating these data sets and these large language models is sort of like the seed stage of something that is potentially very, very powerful. And that's what I find extremely inspiring about all of these ones. So the adding of Yoruba, Bambara, Swahili, Luganda, various languages all over the LMICs, I think is extremely, extremely important. And how that practically relates to people's lives is there could be a farmer who can speak in whatever language they want, and they can look into, they can get relevant, useful, just-in-time data that can help them make a difference in their lives and in their work or whichever work they're doing.
Right.
Very, very exciting.
You've teed up Rachel nicely because Silicon Valley has an outsized influence in all these technologies. And you just published an article in Nature this week that kind of reshapes the narrative around artificial intelligence and highlights the contribution of African scientists and researchers. Why is this perspective important?
Well, I think it's particularly important for Africans to drive their own agenda. But the thing we were highlighting most of all in this piece is the need for real, precise evidence that tells us what impact some of these amazing technologies that we now have the use cases for are having in real societies and communities across the continent. At the moment, what's driving a lot of the decision-making is based off of evidence and data coming out of other parts of the world. And if we use that data to make decisions about what we want to see here, we're going to leave people behind, and we're going to risk producing precisely the kinds of inequities we're trying to address. I think it's also really important as we try to scale up these technologies so that they have major impact across societies. We need to be able to trust that they work. We need to be able to demonstrate to clinicians or to governments to buy into them. And we need evidence to do that.
All right, fantastic. It's interesting that you're talking about this. I'm about to talk to Sabin Nsanzimana from Rwanda, who looks after the health ministry. And I saw this study that I have to talk about. I think we were talking about this before with Juliana, that an AI generative was asked to come up with some examples of white doctors helping African children, and it could not, of black doctors helping white children. It just could not do that. And eventually, when it did come up with something, inserted like wildlife in it, essentially reinforcing stereotypes about white saviors and black suffering and all of that, which I'm sure a lot of you might have seen that. No one has seen it? Okay. Too bad. I guess it does not exist on the internet, so we're not going to talk about it. Minister Nsanzimana, Rwanda is an early adopter in a lot of technologies in lots of different sectors. How exactly are you thinking about AI specifically in the application and provision of healthcare in Rwanda?
Good morning. I think it's probably AI has been the most discussed topic this year in any conference than other topics before. And Rwanda is actually looking at this as an opportunity to catch up in many things, given the scarcity of tools, train people, and even delivering care much faster than before, given the disease burden we are facing. So we started by looking at what do we have in place as a foundation, even for AI to be useful, because it's not just adopting. You need to have policies, you need to have laws that are going to be important for AI to even do what it's supposed to be doing. And we've seen during actually COVID pandemic a lot of AI opportunities coming up much faster than before because it was needed. And at specific country level like Rwanda, we've seen, for example, AI driven for self-screening applications. We've seen robots being used to protect healthcare workers when they were most exposed. And we've also seen some messages being passed different ways, but AI was able to channel the right information to people. So we build on that, and recently we adopted our first policy on AI, and also data-driven laws that make sure AI is not becoming an obstacle for us to adopt it, rather useful tool to make sure we move faster. And we're glad to see the first actually good examples coming up, like the most recent Grand Challenge group that was working on Fourth Industrial Revolution, supported by Gates Foundation, working on how we support community health workers at the forefront of delivering care, understanding this complexity of language and information that is important for them to talk to people, to treat, without struggling to read a lot of guidelines and documents. And the progress that they have made in just a few months is amazing, moving from 6% to now 60% wow. Of precision, because the AI was quite important helping them. And we see this being applied, for example, in malaria prevention. So we have a group working on using drones to detect mosquito bleeding sites, and then using the same precision to target those sites to reduce mosquito spreading. And this is actually helping a lot our journey towards malaria elimination. So there are many examples coming up, and Rwanda is actually trying to be like the lab for AI on the continent, so that we can take this as an advantage for filling the gaps we have that with the legacy of the global inequity in training people, having tools, the AI may be able to help bridge this gap by adding in for what we have, especially personnel, like diagnostics, imaging, AI plus one radiologist. Maybe they can do better than 100 radiologists that we have to train for the next 3 decades.
Right.
Yeah.
I saw Bill and Juliana nodding aggressively as you were talking. Their brains are excited about all the applications. Bill, you can go first. You just announced this $30 million to support the advancement of accessible and impactful AI on the continent, so you can build on that.
Well, there's very specific applications, like, the ultrasound work we're doing, where it's pregnancy risk and gestational age, and that's, testing the efficacy of that. It's in the medical space where you've got to be very careful and it's appropriately regulated. There we'll be able to show results, pretty dramatic results in terms of that risk information. Even in the health advice area, at first it'll start out with fairly specific scenarios, like a pregnant mother, what things should she be thinking about? And it'll go through the health workers some, because then they can apply their common sense. Eventually, we'd like to go directly to the patient, because that's where the huge efficiency is, that it's almost like your own doctor. And it'll be an interesting question whether the rich world or the developing world moves most quickly on these health applications. In a sense, the developing world should, because the shortage of doctors is so extreme there. But I think it'll take governments and philanthropy to come in, because otherwise a lot of the commercial focus will be on the customers who can absolutely pay the most. And so, is it financial advice? Is it agriculture? Is it education? Is it health? I think we're going to have clusters in every single one of those. And the fact that countries, Sierra Leone, Kenya, Rwanda, Nigeria, are all putting themselves forward as, hey, don't leave us out. I think that's constructive competition, because, if one country gets ahead, like Kenya, a lot of the financial stuff started there. Maybe they'll get ahead on that. The other countries can follow that. It won't be, some proprietary thing holding people back. And so across all the verticals, across all the countries, how quickly can we go? Some conversations I find myself saying to people, no, it won't happen overnight. Other conversations, I'm more promoting it, saying, wait a minute, this is the most profound platform change that I've ever seen. So, given 5 years, I do think, the healthcare sector will be very substantially improved by the use of these tools. Now, that's a big promise. 5 years in health stuff is a very short period of time, but I think it can be done.
In this period of rapid development, when some people say we're in an AI arms race, will the commercial interests win out? That's why it's necessary for governments and philanthropy to partner to make sure these tools are in the hands of the people that need them most, largely here in the developing world?
Well, whenever you have new technology, the amount of time it takes to suffuse to benefit everyone, can be very long. One of the greatest achievements of the Gates Foundation was taking vaccines like rotavirus that were being given to the kids that weren't at risk because they were in wealthier countries, and making sure those were available to all the kids in the world, which is where the diarrheal death burden was. And so, it's kind of a miracle that in the last 20 years, that vaccine availability has improved a lot. Even so, it still was delayed. And so AI may be the first technology where we have a chance to actually have as much learning coming out of the countries here, which are dealing with more labor shortage, than we have, it kind of a trickle-down approach. And that's why, when I saw the first 50, it was like, wow, already people are engaged in the particular needs they have. And this language thing is very interesting because, it's hard, but it's it's very doable. This technology in terms of learning new languages,
Right.
if we gather the data sets, you have to decide, is it all in one model, or do you have a front-end model that does the language translation, and then it goes in a back-end model, and we'll use both of those approaches. But the language coverage thing, there are concrete steps that can be taken. That's not a wish, that's adding the cost to add the N+1 language, both in textual form and in speech form, speech in, speech out, is pretty modest. And so that will not be a barrier across all the different vertical areas.
I saw you nodding so aggressively, Juliana. You've been on the front row of so many technologies on the continent, the first incubator in Kenya, Ushahidi, crisis mapping, now with M-PESA. Jump in.
So just to add on to that, I think it presents an opportunity for private sector to also look at the ideas that have come out of the grand challenges, because some of them can be infused with sustainable business models. I had a really great conversation with Theo Frieda, and one of the ways that we were thinking about that data around crop yields or crop diseases, how can we infuse that into insurance and lowering the insurance premiums? So just to add on to what you said, I think it's really important that the commercial interests are not just, let's say, of global north commercial interest.
Right.
We have commercial interest here in Africa too, and we need to figure out what those commercial and social interests are. They go hand in hand. The more we have more productive, empowered youth, and to your comments earlier about Africa's youth being its treasure, I think this is the opportunity to empower African youth with the tools that they need to understand and to be able to play a role, not only in creating these large language models and being developers in the AI space, but also knowing how to use AI to have positive outcomes. So it is possible, and we're at a very critical juncture, I think. It's the beginning. And the great thing about beginnings is we can decide what is our intent. And there is an author, Kentaro Toyama. He worked for Microsoft Research in India. He wrote the book Geek Heresy, and he said, technology amplifies human intent. And even as we look at the possibilities around AI and its applications in health, agriculture, in everything, it's almost like the early days of the internet. It feels that way. It's fundamentally powerful. The question is, what is the intent that we want this technology to drive, and what are the outcomes that we want, and what is our role to play? Private sector, philanthropy, governments. How do we create an enabling environment so that we can have this intent show up the way we want?
Nicely leading into David, who used to be an education minister. Thank you. And is now chief minister of an entire country. How do we make sure these technologies are in the hands of our people so that's transforming their everyday lives right now, not in 5-10 years?
If I were to answer Juliana's question about what is the intent, I will say to do good better. And I think it's linked to, again, something that Bill said and everybody's been saying. So earlier this morning, I had a call with the Minister of Agriculture in Sierra Leone, and I was asking him about what are the ways in which technology can transform his Feed Sierra Leone strategy, well, the president's strategy about feeding Sierra Leone. And he mentioned two things. One was on digitizing farmers so that you're able to give farmers what they need and know where they are, what kind of crops they are dealing with to help decision-making. But the second thing he mentioned is with these IVR, these interactive voice responses, where farmers can call in to ask questions, to find out information, but they're calling it in their local languages. Now, there's a future in which, as Bill said, there's some front-end language model and something happening in the back end and on the cloud, where at very low-cost technology, you can just record and answer all these questions that frequently ask questions. But you can imagine a world in which you have these models where farmers are calling in their local languages to ask questions that are being parsed and the answers given to them, so advisory to the farmers where they are on what kind of seeds they need and what kind of solutions, how to use fertilizers, how they're going to better fix it. That hybrid technology will be empowered and enabled in a way that we can only imagine, but we are at the beginnings of actually amplifying this. So I do think we will do good better. And there's an element for that to happen. I think it's that we have to do these things with governments. We have to imagine sandboxes, digital sandboxes, AI sandboxes, regulatory sandboxes. We don't run and build the technology and then say, wait, how does it affect people later on? How can our people benefit? We can ask questions about, our people need to be able to feed themselves, our people need to be able to to deliver without dying, and our people need to be able to access quality education and jobs. That's what we want to do. How do we use technologies in safe ways to ensure that that happens? That's what we provide. That's the kind of questions I think about.
Right, I want to jump in here with the Minister Nsanzimana, and as you comment also, if you could solve one problem with AI, what would it be? It's not that hard. Yeah, it's working.
Sure. I think AI is supposed to make our lives easier and better. When you think about health sector, everyone wants to get disease detected, even prevented,
right,
detected quicker, treated, and someone gets better and go back to work. So we're seeing AI actually coming in to help in this cascade of care, especially in the outbreaks and pandemics, since we just came out from COVID-19 active phase, where we were all surprised by how our health systems were actually overwhelmed by COVID-19. So imagine the applications in AI being able to help us anticipate what is going to be our next challenge in the healthcare system. So you actually act early before you react on something. So that is one way AI could actually protect our healthcare systems. Or imagine knowing diseases before it's become chronic, like cancer.
Right.
You want every provider, every doctor wants to detect cancer from phase 1 or phase 2 before it gets to 3 and 4, because the outcome is different. So AI can quickly do this, can help actually seeing more of these applications for cervical cancer, for example. You can apply this, detect early and treat early. I've talked about imaging, for example, diagnostics. This is, again, something happening, and so, we've seen a lot of publications coming out comparing imaging detecting cancer with the radiologist alone, with the radiologist with AI. More precise, much faster, more people diagnosed and treated. So this is happening, and we should see AI as a solution, not a problem. And in medical and healthcare, actually, I see this as a sector where you can see better outcomes, quick returns, if AI is well channeled with our policies, right data, open, not closed, but also secured. And this is for our policymakers, as ministers, as other policymakers, private and public sector, to make sure we create right environment for AI to help us, not to run behind, because it looks like we are a bit behind for what innovators are doing.
All right, so that leads us into, Rachel, the policy and regulatory pathways here that African countries especially need to put in place so that we can adopt this in a safe but also, I guess, fast way.
Yeah, I think governments have a very, very important role to play, and I'll touch quickly on 3 points. One is that we know these technologies come with immense risks, and these risks can lead to harm for precisely the people we are trying to help and empower. So governments need to establish regulation to safeguard the use of these technologies, to set standards to how they might be developed, to provide access to redress and remedy for people who are harmed by technologies, which again enables trust to be built. But we've also seen that regulation is not impeding or should not impede innovation. It actually does the opposite and can provide legal certainty for AI developers looking to scale up their work. If they feel they're operating in a legal vacuum, there will be a kind of conservatism and they won't go as far as they can. So whether that's through regulatory approval or ethics clearance or simply providing a legal basis for AI development, setting priorities, it's very important for scaling up. And then the last point that I want to raise, and I think this goes back to some of the points Juliana was making so well about intent, and some of the points around the kind of arms race and the commercialization in this space. We need to be putting women at the forefront of developing these technologies. I think Juliana is an example of this, but she's also spoken about Theophida. When women lead, they naturally do work that is for social benefit. We have had a history of development and sustainable development that shows us this. We know that this is an industry that AI is a space that, quite frankly, is driven by power and money and national competition. But if we put women in charge, then I think we can work towards the type of world where we meet the SDGs and where the net benefits of this powerful technology is felt by all humanity everywhere.
Fantastic. Bill, the UK plans an AI safety summit, partly because of some of these risks. And do we move forward with caution or with speed? And how are you thinking about, what are you most concerned about in this technology, first of all? Is there anything that particularly worries you?
Well, there's many different time frames. The AI technology, if you go out and you get something that's dramatically more powerful than we have today, you can almost think of it as too good of a thing, that we move from a world where we have a scarcity of talent to solve certain problems, where we almost get into excess. And that, that's not imminent, but it's not impossible.
Too good of a thing to the point where it's dangerous?
Yes. In terms of, our world is designed around scarcity of doctors, teachers, food, and if you ever get to a point where through AI, both robotic AI and sort of white-collar AI, you're performing a lot of those tasks and that human work is no longer necessary, then you have a problem of excess that is very, very different. That's not the problem we have today. We're not even close to it. But this is the first technology that's essentially unbounded in terms of how capable it gets. All the previous technology revolutions, they did free up human labor, but they weren't such a broad, deep set of capabilities. And so a lot of the AI world is thinking about those eventualities without knowing how quickly that will come. That's important that there's people thinking about that. In the near term, I would say, the biggest thing is getting the quality of these systems. We still have some surprises in terms of when the system is right, when it's not. 4 out of 5 of the answers will stun you at how good it is. 1 out of 5, it'll be like, what? And we're just doing the systems architecture that, particularly in health, where you never want to give bad medical advice, we need to make sure the accuracy is very, very high. And I do think there's very good attention to that. There's some issues around copyright. in terms of how the models get trained. There's issues around deep fakes that, do you know when you're looking at something, is it real or not real?
Right.
Part of that is going to be labeling things. Part of that is going to be making sure the penalties for misleading people are very clear. And we're going to have to educate the public in the same way that we already know that you can see text that's completely made up. Now you're going to have to get used to the fact that you can have images or even videos or even a voice that sounds authentic that in fact was made up. And so that, it's just a naivete that heretofore videos, by and large, were exactly what they appeared to be. And so I think it's important to separate out the fears sort of by domain, where the health domain is a very special one, and by the time frame, where both the near term and the long term are important, but it's a separate set of challenges.
So, Juliana, same question. Given the challenges, the bias, the concerns, do we proceed with caution or with speed?
I'd like for you to use the visual of a chameleon, but not its speed. I'd like a faster chameleon, but the way it goes like this, and then as it takes one step, it scans to see the environment,
right,
and what possibly the impact or what's going on, and then takes the next step. So I'd like for us to forge ahead, and as we take the step forward, we're scanning to see what is the impact, what are the possibilities, what are the guardrails we need to put in place as we take the next step. That's how, but we do need to move forward. The potential is immense. It needs to be validated, and we need to do more to accelerate progress in the global south. And one of the key things is deep tech, which has a component of AI in it, because AI can help to make progress in engineering and major scientific breakthroughs. That's mostly been the purview of the global north and China. This is an opportunity where Africa can be part of the deep tech stories. So the startups, some of the global challenges grantees can end up being startups and SMEs and companies that come out of this and help us take the way forward and keep Africa part of the innovation story,
right,
that goes into the future. I think we need to move forward faster, sort of like a very fast chameleon.
Like a fast chameleon. That is a good example. David, are you all in? Are you cautiously testing the waters? Where do you fall?
I'm on the all inside, closest to the all inside. I do like imagining the world of abundance. I do like to imagine. I feel like that's a good problem to have.
Right.
It's a problem we have to think about. But I do want to imagine that world where our basics are addressed and the challenges that we have. So I wish that problem can come sooner, and then we can rearrange the world in different ways. Look, we have to have deep empathy. I love humans, but humans make horrible mistakes. Humans also gain lots of knowledge and use it to do bad things. So we don't then say humans should not keep learning, and we shouldn't keep expanding human knowledge. We want to keep expanding human knowledge, knowing that humans make horrible decisions that affect lots of other people all around the world. And
Humans make terrible decisions, but what if computers make even terribler decisions?
I feel like that's a fear that we have, and we should recognize those fears.
Right.
And they do make terrible decisions. But here's an example. How do I put this? So you have white supremacists that exist, and they make horrible decisions. And they kill people, and they do other things, and they hate. But we don't say kill those supremacists or any
right,
supremacists, or like it's not a decision that we make. So these technologies will make bad decisions,
And so we build guardrails in society to deal with that.
Absolutely, and that's why we're speaking about these governance issues. That's why we're speaking about these safe ways of developing these technologies. But the reaction shouldn't be, oh, we should slow down because we don't know what's happening. It's that we should work with policymakers to ensure that these guardrails exist. 30
seconds each, Rachel and Minister Nsanzimana.
Thank you. I think we need to be really cautious. I think it's not a matter of speed, it's a matter of urgency. I think we are at a point in time when we recognize that globally we recognize that we are so far away from meeting the SDGs that we need major efforts. So I don't think it's as much speed as it's about collaboration and partnership, and as many of us as possible seeking to commit to using AI in the right way, in a cautious way, that brings benefits to everyone.
Caution, a fast chameleon, speed, or urgency, Minister?
I think AI can be a problem if we decide to make it a problem. But it can be also a solution if we decide to make it a solution. I think there are two things we need to have in mind. One, AI should be responsible and inclusive. We have to have the right policies, and very quickly. We have to make sure our data are open and accessible and protected. And we have also to understand that we're lagging behind in so many things, especially this continent, and that the only way to catch up, especially in healthcare, is to bring in unusual solutions. And I see AI being one of those.
Okay. Bill, do you like fast chameleons?
Sure.
Okay, I guess we know where everybody stands. That's a good place to end the panel. Thank you so much to my panelists. You've been fantastic. Thank you.